What's up, Wisconsin? Welcome back to the Inside Wisconsin Show. Trevor Thomas, John Anderson, J.A. The one time we jump on the Packers bandwagon, it's this episode, the Packers preview. A lot of X's and O's and some personality talk, too.
Yeah, generally we're about guests and about their stories, but every once in a while there are teams and seasons that are called for a deeper look, a deeper breakdown. And which is why we rely on other good folks on this. Hopefully the questions are great to elicit information that people will know, use, and be entertained by as the Packers start the 2023 season, which is now what, 103rd, 104th, 1919. So 104th?
Four? Yeah, it should be fourth.
Been a lot.
I feel like we celebrated 100 years in 2021, too, because that whole 2020 season was a little janky in terms of COVID, right? So, all right, so guests on the show today, Jason Wilde, ESPN Wisconsin, as well as a writer, a longtime writer for the Wisconsin State Journal. And then we'll jump over and talk to a local guy, Chris Roth, the sports director for WBAY Channel 2 here in Green Bay. Those guys combined covering the Packers for well over 50 years. They know
60.
their stuff.
Almost 60 seasons worth. Yeah.
It really is almost 60 years. You'll enjoy it. Packers fans, remember, we're purveyors of joy. Just because we're chatting sports doesn't mean you got to turn into a bunch of punks in the comment section, okay? Keep it positive. That's what we're all about. Let's learn a thing or two about the upcoming season. Jason Wilde is up first on the Inside Wisconsin Show.
The Inside Wisconsin Show is brought to you by American Family Insurance, Aaron's Company, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, Capital Credit Union, Festival Foods, Quick Trip, Miller Lite, North Star Mohican Casino Resort, Provea Health, and the University of Wisconsin-Platteville.
Hey, remember to subscribe on YouTube. Leave a review. Smash the like button. Just get with us. J.A., when I reached out to Mr. Jason Wilde and asked him to join us for the Packers preview, he said, wow, I've been hoping to someday get an invite. I had Wes Hod envy. Jason Wilde, ESPN Wisconsin and the Wisconsin State Journal. What's up, Jason? Good to see you, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for putting me on the list. I know it is an exclusive club, but I also know that Wes has joined you a bunch. And I'll say this, not just in American history, but in world history, Wes Hodkiewicz is one of the best human beings ever. So I was not in any way offended that he was picked long before me. I just was jealous that I had not gotten a call. So thank you, Wes, for your service. And thanks to you, too, for finally reaching out to me as well.
You bet.
What is this about Wes? Like Domosky was counting his appearances towards Wes's period, too. He's like, I don't know, you've had him on 3 times or twice, and I've only been like, this guy is amazing.
If he wasn't such a great human being, we would all hate him. We would all be jealous of him, but he's the best. And so we all have to just sort of say, everybody likes Wes. Can't blame them for that. We do too.
Yeah. And it's crazy. My sister, who lives in Grand Rapids, when we went to the London game, and here's Leroy Butler and all that. And she, is that Wes? I'm like, yeah, I totally need to meet Wes. Like, now my sister is fanboying, and she's 60 and she's fanboying Wes. It's ridiculous.
We by the highlight of training camp, and look, I'm sure we'll get into Jordan Love throws and all kinds of moments. Highlight of training camp for me, I was running a little bit late for practice, and I happened to time it up where Wes was being asked for his autograph on a hat with like player autographs on it, and then Wes is writing his name. It was just a thing of beauty. I could not have come at a more perfect time to practice than to witness that great moment.
So wait,
Wes.
Yeah. Other than the Wes Hodkiewicz hour, like we should talk about the Packers, right? That's on the thing as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he works for them. I guess we're sort of talking about the Packers.
By the way, that's really nice that he would do that. I went to an event one time, and I am literally seated at the table, and I have got Lawrence Taylor and Eric Dickerson, and then me. We got people around the room. I was hosting, and it was at Firestone Golf Club. I was hosting, so they sat me there. So people would have their football, and they'll come, and they're like, LT would sign it, and then they give it to me. I'm like, I'm not signing that. I don't want to be a jerk.
Right.
But you don't hand me your baby. I'll sign your baby. That's fine. I'll sign your head. I'm not signing a football with those two guys and diminishing the value of this thing. Wes apparently has no such shame. His vanity knows no bound.
That's exactly what the point of that story was. You nailed it.
Unbelievable. Hey,
That's
what's
amazing.
the vibe as you sat around camp? Because it is, I mean, you changed one guy, but it seems like you've changed everything by subbing out. You're sending Aaron out here to me in the East Coast and plugging in Jordan Love.
Yeah, it's incredibly positive. I think Packers fans are extremely, extremely excited. There's a newness to it, right? Because I guess even greatness can get tiresome, especially if, maybe he rubs people the wrong way with a few different aspects of either his on-field behavior or his off-the-field interests, etc. I do think it's really interesting that Matt LaFleur continues to make sure he emphasizes that they haven't played a real NFL game yet. Quite frankly, it's only preseason. That is a clear theme from the head coach as he is trying to be a little more cautious about expectations. But there's no denying that the vibe is all positivity. Tausch and I were talking about this the other day. Aaron Rodgers walked into a situation, even after Favre was traded to the Jets in the summer of 2008, where there were still plenty of Favre loyalists that were dubious of whether or not the kid was going to be okay. That is not the case here. It is full steam ahead, all aboard the Jordan Love hype train. There are very few Packers fans that aren't on board with this. And I think that's Matt LaFleur's concern, is that he knows it's going to be harder once they get to the regular season. Defenses are game planning for this young quarterback, this inexperienced quarterback, even though he's in year 4. And maybe things aren't going to look as smooth as they did during the preseason. But I'll say this, you guys. The thing that Jordan Love did, and he was better than I anticipated. I didn't expect him to light the world on fire. I didn't expect him to be terrible. I expected him to be okay, and he's been more than okay. But the one thing that there is no denying, he doesn't get flustered. He doesn't get flummoxed. He is even-keeled and is able to handle, so far, everything that's been thrown at him. And I think that shows it's not too big for him.
Jason, you've been around long enough where this isn't the first time you've experienced this covering the Packers. I'm not calling you old. I'm just saying it's been a little bit in terms of you on the beat, right? So you mentioned it a little bit there, but this is a totally different scenario from when we went from Brett to Aaron and now Aaron to Jordan. What are the differences, though, that you're noticing inside 1265 versus just a fan thing?
Well, so first of all, yeah, this is year 28, which I think John Anderson was still shopping at the Sears on Military Avenue when I started. But one of the things that's really interesting is that when Rodgers took over, there was a faction of the locker room, Darren College, Jason Spitz, all those young offensive linemen. I think Greg Jennings and James Jones to a degree, where they didn't feel the same connection with Favre that they felt with the understudy. And I think there's the same dynamic happening here with Love versus Rodgers, right? I mean, A.J. Dillon is one of Love's closest friends, right? Christian Watson was at the Door County getaway for Memorial Day, along with several other players. There is that connectivity where it's not a 39-year-old guy, it's a 24-year-old guy, and he's closer in age and closer in interests and all those kinds of things. So I definitely think the vibe within the team is also very positive and very, we're happy to be supporting our guy who we connect with. I did reach out to Aaron during the offseason when we were at Romeo Dobbs's locker. It was just a small group of us, and Romeo Dobbs said, I learned a lot from Aaron, even with him barely speaking to me. And I kind of was shocked that he said it that way. And you could tell Romeo knew what he had said, and he was trying to kind of walk it back a little bit unsuccessfully. And so I reached out to Aaron. I just said, look, hey, I just want you to know that this is what was said today. And in response, I think Aaron felt like he had made all kinds of effort to connect with Romeo Dobbs, and maybe they just are different ages and different personalities. We're seeing what he's doing with the Jets, and I think there started to be kind of this narrative that Rodgers wasn't connecting with young players. I would argue that there were two in particular. It was Amari Rodgers and it was Romeo Dobbs that maybe didn't feel the connection with Rodgers that they would have liked. And I would put some of that on Aaron Rodgers, frankly, right? If you think you're being a good leader, but those guys don't feel like you are, then you need to do more, right? I'm not absolving him. but I just think it's a more comfortable connectivity between these young guys. And it's also probably Jordan's leadership style. I had Dallin Levitt, who was a senior at Utah State when Jordan was a true freshman, say that when there's an issue, it never feels like conflict with Jordan Love. Now, let's see what happens when you run the wrong route and he throws a pick six and you lose a game if it still never feels like conflict. They have not had that bond tested yet, but once they do, we'll see how Jordan handles it.
It's funny how you talk about that connectivity. I mean, I see that. I think probably you said you've been on this beat for 28 years. I've been at SportsCenter 25, and people come in and you're nice to them and you're like, we're good, we're partnering. But there's something different when I work with a guy like Steve Levy or John Buccigross, who I've been with for 25 years, or Zubin Mehenti, who is fantastic, but we've anchored together too. And
right.
He's 30-something and I'm 58, and I'm worried about getting kids to college and he's worried about, and that becomes a strange and different dynamic through nobody's fault other than, time and draft when we go through. The feeling you get from Jordan Love, you said kind of better than you expected where he is. And the Packers' relentless positivity. I think of Moneyball when they're trying to teach Scott Hatteberg how to play first base. It's like picking machine. Like, do you sense there's some of this? We're trying to pump him up, or do you sense that this is genuine, that he's on the right track and not everybody is just blowing smoke to make sure the kid doesn't go in the tank?
Well, first of all, I love Moneyball. Tell him it's not that hard. It's extremely hard to
Thank you, Ron Washington.
Thanks. Well, that was good. Look, I do think there's a mixture of both. I do think there is legitimate reason for optimism and encouragement. Look, I have watched all of his training camps, starting with 2020, when we would sit inside Lambeau Field, and we all had like our own seating section because we didn't know what COVID was exactly. So we're outside in Lambeau. We're all wearing our masks, and there's nobody within like 20 rows of me. And I'm watching Jordan, and he looks indecisive. LaFleur kept using his first 3 years this phrase, indecisive equals ineffective. And it was 100% true. Jordan himself acknowledged that Sean Clifford picked up the offense much more quickly than Jordan did. Well, he had a truncated training camp. He had no offseason as a rookie. In fairness to him, that was a lot not his fault. Now, that said, I think he has let it rip more throwing the football, which I didn't see frequently enough from him in his first 3 years. So I think that's part of it. He definitely has plenty of arm. I think his accuracy is better. One under probably talked about aspect of his improvement, and I said this the moment they hired this guy, even though he's Aaron Rodgers' guy, Tom Clements, who is not great with the media. He does not enjoy his interactions with us, but he is great with young quarterbacks. Remember, he was actually in Arizona for a while with Kyler Murray when Kyler Murray got off to a good start as a young player. He was great with Rodgers. He was great with Matt Flynn, who he developed from a 7th-round pick into a guy that, while he didn't start many games in the league, he got a contract that said the Seahawks were planning on starting him. So Tom Clements is great for young quarterbacks, and I think he has really helped Jordan Love improve his mechanics, improve his footwork, and I think that has factored into his improvement. So, again, Aaron Rodgers didn't push for Tom Clements solely because he would be good for Jordan Love. Aaron Rodgers wanted him for Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers also knew that he would be really good for Jordan Love whenever Jordan Love took over.
So now Jordan Love took over, and there's got to be some change in the culture. Last year, Packers welcome back luncheon at Lambeau Field, the Greater Green Bay Chamber. I sat right next to Christian Watson, and I said, how are you learning the offense? And he said, which one, Matt's or Aaron's? That's a thing of the past. And now here we are at the luncheon this year, and Keyshawn Nixon sits with us. And I said, how's the culture? And he said, it's Matt's team now. Is that the vibe that you're getting too, Jason? I mean, like, let's be honest. Aaron carries a big stick, and now he's not here. And now Matt can really take it over. What are you hearing?
Right. And then at the same time, we're watching Hard Knocks, where Aaron and Nathaniel Hackett are running their version of this offense, and they are in lockstep with what their offense or their version looks like. Matt LaFleur, if you want to irritate Matt LaFleur, there's a couple of ways to do it. And one of them is to ask him about his offense and if he's finally getting to run his offense. He hates that. But it's true. In fact, even to the degree that the team president brought it up. Well, I think Matt's going to run his offense more. Okay. Matt doesn't like you saying that, Mark, but go ahead and say it anyway. To me, that is the biggest change, is that you're not going to have the benefits of Aaron Rodgers' experience, which you're seeing the Jets highlight a lot, right? But you're also not going to have the drawbacks. And if you have young players like a Romeo Dobbs, I think Christian Watson he scored a 38 on the Wonderlic. He's really smart. He also doesn't seem to mind tough coaching. I think his dad was tough on him growing up. I don't think he had a big problem with Rodgers. I don't think he had a big problem figuring out the different versions of the offense either. But I think other guys did. And so I think this really helps from that perspective. I would also look at the fact that Matt LaFleur did tailor things for this offense specifically to Rodgers. We're seeing Jordan go to his ears and do the can play. That's the second play that's built into each play call. Aaron Rodgers sometimes did that, but other times he just changed the play completely. And that's not something that Jordan Love is going to do. So from that perspective, I think it's easier. At the same time, I thought it was interesting. They ran pretty vanilla stuff, obviously, like everybody does in the preseason. Jordan told me that it was the day 1, 2, and 3 installs 1, 2, and 3 that they ran in games. But if you watched, he was in shotgun a heck of a lot. Like, I really anticipated the change to be more under center, more old school Shanahan style offense, play action passes, where I remember Matt Hasselbeck telling Tausch and I this, that the beauty of the Shanahan style offense is after the first 4 steps the quarterback takes, you don't know if it's a run or a pass. With Rodgers in the shotgun so much, that was mitigated. I'm eager to see, once we get to the actual game starting on September 10th, if there's more under center, there's more true play action in their game.
I find it curious, and Trevor and I disagree on this some. He was ready to give Aaron the ride out of town, right? How can I help you? Some of us are like, I don't know, Super Bowl quarterbacks, all-pro quarterbacks maybe are tough to give away like that when you do that. The idea that he was running his version of the offense, that doesn't bother me at all. The guy's out there, and he's as good as they come. And I recall a lot from my youth, like Roger Staubach called the whole game, and so did Terry Bradshaw. And if Joe Montana wants to run whatever Joe Montana wants to run, I'm good with that. And somehow that became a detriment to Aaron. Oh, my gosh. And like you said, in Matt's thing, I'm like, okay, I don't know. I don't want to say the whole world's wrong. I'm just saying in my case, I am not as put off by that as someone else. I'm curious now if you think that if things go wrong, it's going to be Jordan Love's fault, or they're going to go, well, he still doesn't have a first-round draft pick on the outside. It's amazing how that has shifted, right? All of a sudden it's like, wait, did we draft enough skill players? No, suddenly it's all on Jordan Love here.
Well, first of all, I'm a big fan of Trevor. Not as big of a fan as I am of Wes Hodkiewicz, of course, but still a big fan. Now, that said, this is what happens when you go 8-9, right? Suddenly, when you're winning NFL MVPs back-to-back, running your version of Matt LaFleur's offense, how you interpret it, no one's complaining. My biggest pet peeve about last season isn't even that aspect of it. It's the fact that I covered Brett Favre breaking his thumb twice in his career, 1999 and 2003. And he was lauded as, oh, my God, the greatest Iron Man in NFL history. What quarterback plays with a broken thumb? And with Aaron Rodgers, it's, so what? He sucks this year. I didn't understand that narrative at all. Now, that said, I do think that there is a value in having a guy run this offense, and I don't want to demean other quarterbacks that have done this, whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo, whether it's Jared Goff, whether it's going to be Jordan Love. But I think there is a paint-by-numbers aspect to this offense that allows you to be successful even if you are not an all-time great quarterback running it. But here's the thing. Remember the offseason of 2021, leading into the 2021 season. Rodgers had won his MVP. They had drafted Love, and we all knew behind the scenes before Adam Schefter on draft day reported it, that there was some waxy buildup and there were some issues behind the scenes. The Los Angeles Rams in January inquired through proper channels about Aaron Rodgers' trade availability, and the San Francisco 49ers inquired after Adam broke the news of his displeasure with the organization. Now, I firmly believe that the 49ers were tampering with Rodgers and vice versa. But the bottom line is 2 teams, both run the same offense, both had quarterbacks, not as great as Aaron Rodgers, lead them to Super Bowls, right? They both got to the Super Bowl. And yet both Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan thought, I need to upgrade the quarterback if we're going to win, even though this offense is great. And what did Sean McVay go out and do? They went and got Matt Stafford and they won a title. What did the 49ers do? They drafted Trey Lance thinking he was going to be an improvement. Didn't work out that way. But so I do think, and I know that wasn't the question, John, but I do think that is something that gets lost in our frustration with Panchakarma, ayahuasca, darkness retreat, all these things that we maybe didn't particularly enjoy hearing about all the time from the previous quarterback. Now, in terms of actually running this offense and what Jordan Love is capable of, I cannot wait for September 10th, because whether you were in the get Rodgers out of town, I'm sick of him crowd, or just the I'm ready for something different, we haven't won a Super Bowl since 2010, if you're that part of the fan base, or you're I just think Jordan Love's going to be really good and I want him to get his chance. Whatever part of that, whatever group you're in, now we get to find out for real. And we can all be optimistic and encouraged by what we saw this summer. But when the Bears come out and they have a game plan for him, and Matt Eberflus is doing things to frustrate Jordan Love in this offense, then we're going to see exactly what we're working with here for the next 17 games. Because as a Packers fan, you guys know this, nobody was more frustrated with Dom Capers than the Packers fan base. I can't tell you how many times I saw the hashtag fire Capers. But you know one thing Dom Capers was great at, even when his defenses weren't great? Overwhelming young quarterbacks. And Jordan Love is an inexperienced quarterback. And if there are defensive coordinators, there's got to be some that are licking their chops thinking, okay, wait till he gets a load of us and what we're going to throw at him.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talked to John about creating Inside Wisconsin, it seemed like a really good idea to just record us saying things. The bad news is I say stupid stuff, and then John never lets me forget it. So when I'm on the non-Aaron Rodgers train at the moment, that could come back to haunt me if we go through like a decade of crap here. However, Joe Thomas was really good at Wisconsin. All right, so here's my kicker here. I wasn't sure how this was going to come up. Yeah, I went there. I have a large bet. I'll leave the number out of it with a buddy of mine who hates the Packers front office and feels like we wasted 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. I said the Packers will win a Super Bowl in the next 7 years. I just believe that's going to happen. Was that stupid? Because it's probably too late for me to back out at this point.
Well, stupid seems strong.
Thanks.
Foolish,
not
if
you think Joe Thomas is like the 37th best player ever to play at Wisconsin.
5th.
Yeah,
He was 5th.
I wasn't going to go there. I'm biased on Joe. He's a good friend of ours, and we love him. Here's a guy who tore his ACL playing defense, because that's the kind of teammate he was once upon a time. But
yeah, we got it. Are the Packers going to win a Super Bowl in the next 7 years or not?
If I had to bet,
yeah,
I would say no. I'm not the betting type. Now, here's the problem. And look, if Goody is right, and Jordan Love is something short of Hall of Fame, but still pretty darn good, and all these young guys, although none of them are first-round picks, all these, the Luke Musgraves, the Tucker Crafts, the Jalen, I'll tell you what, Jaden Reed is a really good player. Like, I'm all in on Jaden Reed. I think Christian Watson has to catch the ball more consistently. I think Romeo Doubs has to stay healthy. Romeo Doubs has, and I know this sounds crazy, but he's got a little Devontae to him in terms of watching him, the way he plays the game. So there's a lot of potential there. We also know that potential gets you fired. Here's the thing that I would argue about my time covering this team, especially the second half of those 28 years. I look back, and the 2010 team gets in the playoffs and is the hot team and wins the Super Bowl, right? That doesn't always happen. 11, they go 15-1. 12, they lose the Fail Mary game, and that's what costs them a bye in the first round of the playoffs that year and gives the 49ers time to install all that Colin Kaepernick read option, and they get run out of the gym. That 2012 team was a pretty good team. 13, Rodgers breaks his collarbone, and they still make the playoffs. 14 is the fulcrum point in their history, right? They get to the Super Bowl there, and everyone's viewing everyone's legacy differently. my point is that they've had some teams, 15 before Jordy tears his ACL in training camp, 16 when Rodgers puts him on his back and gets them to the NFC Championship game when they had no business getting there.
Mm-hmm.
They've had teams that were good to very good with a Hall of Fame quarterback. The margin for error when you don't have a guy like Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback, if you had somebody lesser, I'm not sure how far those other teams get, because I always call him the great deodorant. He covers up the other areas of your team that stink. And I don't know if Jordan Love's going to be good enough to be that good of a deodorant. And so the margin for error is smaller. Can you still win with somebody less than Aaron Rodgers? Absolutely you can. But the one thing that I don't want to get off on a tangent with you guys, but the one thing that has frustrated me about Packers fans, because they're watching, they want to deny it, but there's a large portion of the fan base paying attention to New York and what's going on, besides get them to 65% of the snaps, right? Including Mark Murphy, which I still can't believe he said that. But one thing that I'm frustrated by is that there's a group of Packers fans that are like, he would have never taken a pay cut to help this team. And I would push back really hard on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think he would have taken a pay cut if he felt like the organization and the general manager, Ted, followed by Goody, were going to take that money that he gave up and spent it in a manner that got veteran players to help him win now. And I don't think he ever believed that, and that's why he refused to do it. Now, I'm looking forward to the opportunity of asking Aaron that directly, but to me, the idea that he wouldn't have done that to win another title, if he thought, all right, I take this much less and you go and get other guys, this was a shut up and throw the football operation for a very long time. It was old school. And Goody didn't change it. It was like, to bring back Moneyball, it's Brad Pitt sending Jonah Hill on the road because I don't want to get close to these guys because I got to cut them and stuff. And I think that's still how it is. I don't think anything changed after Rodgers got frustrated, but I firmly believe that to have another Super Bowl, to be one better than Favre, who he was always competitive with, whether he admitted it publicly or not, I think he would have given up all kinds of money if he thought that it would bring in more Charles Woodsons and Julius Peppers and those type of players that were very rarely brought into Green Bay.
The other thing that will really factor in Jordan Love's performance is to go to the other side of the ball. Like, is he going to have to score 17 points a game? Is he going to have to score 27 points a game? Because that's, you touched on a little bit there with defensively shortcomings there with Capers. Like, to me, that's as big a turning point and question mark of how the season goes as number 10.
I would agree, and I'm fascinated by what's going to happen this season because, and look, I am not the leader of the Joe Barry bashing crowd. I know that there is definitely that segment of the fan base as well. But what exactly is Joe Barry's defense, right? Like, he came up with Monty Kiffin and his father-in-law, and it was the Tampa 2, right? He worked in Tampa for a long time. Rod Marinelli ran his version of the Tampa 2. But then, after he was in Detroit, then he goes to L.A. and he's exposed to the Vic Fangio style defense. And then Matt LaFleur hires him to run Vic Fangio's defense when I personally would have tried to hire Vic Fangio. But when you do that, okay, that's his scheme now, right? He's not a Tampa 2 guy. Now he's the Vic Fangio scheme. Well, if you listen to Rasul Douglas and you listen to Jair Alexander, that's not what they're going to run this year. Jair is talking very clearly that he's going to follow the number one wide receiver, which we all remember the game in Minnesota when Justin Jefferson was like, if you watch that game on TV, there were catches that he had where there's no one else in the screen. That's how bad it was, right? In that first half. And so if you're going to have Jair travel, because after that game, we were told, well, if you have your number one corner travel, it creates all kinds of other challenges. You got to do other things differently. If Jair's going to travel, and then we hear them talking about how aggressive they're going to be, and they're going to be up at the line of scrimmage, and they're going to play more bump and run, press man coverage. Well, that's not what this scheme is. This scheme is his own scheme. So if you're going to have Joe Barry now run a scheme that is different than the scheme you hired him for, I don't understand why Joe Barry's still the defensive coordinator then. Like, wouldn't you find someone who runs a scheme that would fit what you want to do as the head coach? And the only explanation I have is Joe Barry's a really nice guy, and Matt LaFleur really likes him, and he is now, because Matt LaFleur has exerted influence on what they're going to run defensively, right? He wanted them to be more aggressive in the second half of the season, and that's what they did. So I'm with you, John. I am fascinated to see what this defense looks like. If it can play as good as they seem to think they can be, I'll give them this. They're not talking like they were last year when they were talking about how they were going to be a top defense. They're just talking about how they're going to play differently. They're not bragging as much. They're trash talking a lot in practice. But if they can be as good as they think they're capable of, obviously they're going to make Jordan Love's life so much easier.
Although, honestly, I like Justin Jefferson in space against Preston Wilson. I just think on a maybe, a more regular basis, I think that works. I think that works every time.
I would say it wasn't as bad as it looked. It was worse. And I would also say it wasn't as good as it looked in that game against Minnesota late in the year either, because we had Jair doing the gritty after he broke up the first pass. I don't think that's an accurate representation of what might happen with Justin Jefferson when those two meet again this year.
Yeah. All right. As we wrap it up with Jason Wilde, one more quick one here. Jason, this is the only time that we talk X's and O's. Really, this show is not about the what of sports, but the who and the how and all that. Mm-hmm. 28 years on the beat. As we wrap it up with you, what is your favorite part about doing what you do?
Oh, well, you've kept me way longer than you probably wanted to, because none of my answers are short. Look, I don't have anything going on, so I can just keep going. But there's a couple of things. One, I love telling people stories, right? I mean, that's one of the coolest things that we get to do. And I just absolutely love that. I don't claim to be as great of an X's and O's expert as others claim to be. I'm more of all right, talk to a coach and have them explain to me why something played out that way. LaFleur's been great with me with that. McCarthy and Sherman were great with me with that. I loved Dom Capers. Mike Pettin was really good to me that way. I started and it was Fritz Schirmer. And I was really lucky to have Fritz Schirmer be able to explain stuff to me in a way that I could understand as a rookie beat writer. So I've always been appreciative of coaches. But telling guys stories and the guys that are overcoming the odds to make rosters and the behind the scenes stuff that I get to tell is my absolute favorite part of the job. That said, and I don't know, you guys as Packers fans, when I think back to all the different mileposts during my career, I've covered Super Bowls that they've won. I covered a Super Bowl that they lost. I've covered some of the most heartbreaking losses in Packers history. 4th and 26 when I had NorthwestAirlines.com up on my computer, ready to book my flight to Charlotte for the Packers' next playoff game. And then obviously Freddie Mitchell made that catch. I've gotten to do a lot of really amazing stuff, but the most amazing moment I've ever seen was in Oakland in 2003. Like that, I mean, being in the press box and watching Brett Favre, but not just Brett Favre. And I think this is the part of that story that this deserves a 30 for 30. If you know anybody who's, connected that way, just an idea. I know Brett's got some issues that he's still dealing with. But what was amazing about that night was not just how Favre played, but how everyone around him played, right? I mean, Tausch was on that team, but like Wesley Walls had done nothing all season. And he makes that catch for the first touchdown. I would argue, frankly, that there were some drawbacks to that night, because then Brett thought that every ball he threw up for grabs was going to be caught the way Javon Walker and Robert Ferguson caught them that night. And that wasn't the case, as we later learned. But to me, this job is about moments and it's about people, right? X's and O's are great. And there's a lot of really smart people at ESPN that do a great job of it. I think I understand the game pretty well for not having played it at anything beyond a flag football level. But at the same time, it's really about the people. And there are so many good stories in every locker room. This is where I would put a plug in for not just this great show, which I watch somewhat religiously, except when Wes is on, then I turn it off. Sure. But for me, these are the kinds of things that we need more of, instead of, hey, here's my way too early prediction for the 53-man roster and stuff like that. I think storytelling is something that we're losing, whether it's in the video or the audio space or in the written space. And I really still believe that there are people that want to hear these guys' stories, not just the betting lines. And so that's the part of this job that's great. This team has a lot of Emmanuel Wilson, I don't know if he's going to make the team or not. He's probably going to end up on the practice squad. But here's a guy that wakes up the morning of the Cincinnati game and realizes in a text message from his siblings that it's the 14th anniversary of their father's death. And then he goes out and has a 100-yard game and announces that he's got a shot at making this team on that day. I mean, those are the kinds of moments that you're so lucky to be there to tell those stories. And I got to tell a lot of them so far, and I hope I get to do another 22 years of it and get to 50 years. I'll be 74 at that point, and Lord knows Paul is not going to want me at home all the time at that age. So hopefully I'm still heading to Lambeau covering the team.
As my father would say, amen and drop your voice. Right? I think that's a great deal. We'll let you go. Thanks so much for your time. Obviously, if you could say hi to our friend Wes, if you see him for me since I'm here, that would be great. But seriously,
and I guess
you're such a good guest too, right behind Wes. No, it's serious. Your insight was great. I appreciate you sharing all that. And like you said, more than just X and O's. And I'm sure we will reach back out to you here in the coming weeks. Thanks so much, Jason.
I just want to be back before Domofsky now. I've set my goals differently. I appreciate you guys asking. Thanks a lot. This was awesome.
Cheers, Jason.
The Inside Wisconsin Show is brought to you by American Family Insurance, Aaron's Company, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, Capital Credit Union, Festival Foods, Quick Trip, Miller Lite, North Star Mohican Casino Resort, Provea Health, and the University of Wisconsin-Platteville.
Hey, remember to subscribe on YouTube, leave a review, smash the like button, just get with us. JA, we drafted Fantasy Football League draft. Yours truly had the ability to choose where he was going to pick first because yours truly finished dead last year. I'm guessing you don't play fantasy football, true?
I do not, because I don't want to root against, I've said this before, I can't root against players that play against my team. First off, as losing, so you finished last, did you have to do anything stupid? Did you have to go around like in a little pink pony tutu, or do you have a tattoo I should be aware of, or anything stupid like that?
No, nothing. And please don't give them any ideas.
Good.
I'm not good at it, but I am good at having a good time responsibly. Last night, we go over to my buddy Brett's house. Miller Lite aplenty for everybody to enjoy responsibly. And there's just something about bringing buddies together to kick off a football season, whether it's fantasy football or the first tailgate of the year or whatever the case may be. This year, the first game is going to be in Chicago, obviously. So we'll go over to somebody's house and watch the game, and Miller Lites will be there. There's just something that brings you together. Football season and Miller Lite, they go together, and you're coming back for one game this year. Is this what I understand? Yes.
Well, we'll see. Hopefully, at least one. I'm gonna divert that before I lose track. I'm on the other end of the Miller Lite thing. This week, I brought all my cans back. So thanks to Miller Lite, I'm like $15.70 richer.
Now good for you.
I didn't do that on the weekend, but not only should you drink responsibly, but go ahead and recycle responsibly because there you can get a value meal out of it when it comes through. So yeah, which I did with plenty of those. Were like, wow, look, there's another white can. Wow, there's a lot of those in here as it goes through. Like every once in a while, a fancy one, but
got a little crusher. You got a can crusher hanging on the wall in the garage?
No, we just no, because if it's Connecticut's an automatic deposit. You get your nickel back, so you got to have it. You got to have it whole so it can read the little barcode and you take it back.
Interesting.
We digress. I'm coming back for the Lions game on Thursday night. By the way, that's right. Amazing. Both games against the Lions are on Thursdays.
Oh,
the Thursday night home game, Thursday night home game, and then Thanksgiving.
Huh.
Yeah, there you go.
That makes sense.
Lions
Thanksgiving is on a Thursday.
Yeah, so I'll be back.
All right. Well, make it Miller time when you come back. Yeah, all season long. Make it Miller time all season long. Get Miller Lite delivered right to your door. Visit MillerLite.com/InsideWisconsin, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. That includes Lambeau Field. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. Lions game, beer won't be frozen by then. You're good. You're good. We got you covered.
Oh, it'd be great.
All right, we're back in between segments of Chatting Packers. Time for another top 5 list presented by Wisconsin's leaders in STEM, the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. UW-Platteville offers healthcare programs focused on serving rural communities here in Wisconsin. Keeping communities healthy helps make them even stronger. Find out more at uwplatt.edu. Platteville Packers, top 5 list time.
Yep.
The quiz with the Big Ten schools last episode, not a great look for me. I think I got the 10th with my 10th guess. So hopefully this goes better.
There's only 10. It's like this.
Yeah, well, somebody legit commented, "Wow, you were terrible at that." I was like, "Thanks, appreciate it."
Oh yeah,
thanks for watching.
Sometimes the quiz is designed to. It's like Wipeout. The course is designed to make you fail. That's all it is.
Good. All right.
We're going to talk about the top 5 season openers in Green Bay Packers history. How do we feel about that? Top 5 season openers. I think there's a lot of interesting material here. Like some people would go 1921. Hey, here's the opener. That right? If they didn't do well, there was some thought they'd drum out of the league. But I don't know that we need any Minneapolis Marines talk on the show.
True.
We had a great opener in 1972. But if I start talking about that, then I might blow what John Wisconsin is. So we'll let that.
True.
So I'm going to go with these and see if you can kind of chime in what you might know. 1950. At number 5 is 1957. Because the 1957 season opener was the first ever game at the New City Stadium, which is now Lambeau Field.
I was going to say the New City Stadium is Lambeau Field.
Yes. 1957, Lyle Blackburn was the coach, and Vice President Nixon was there, and Burt Bell was there. It was a whole weekend celebration, and to cap off the weekend celebration, they beat the Bears 21-17.
Nice.
So 1957, big win, and Lambeau Field, City Stadium, that's significant. The next one, number 4, I'm going to go 1982. Because that was the year the Packers. That was the year the Packers made the playoffs. Remember, after 72, 82 in the strike shortened season, and then it wasn't until homeroom. 82. What's amazing is the season opener was at County Stadium.
Oh, cool!
You're like, what the hell? But it was County Stadium. Bart Starr. They fall behind 23-0 at the half to the Rams. Win 35-23.
Paul Kaufman talked about that.
Yep. Unanswered touchdowns, 35 points, they win it. It's 1982. This one's right in your wheelhouse, 2011.
Here we go.
What do you got? 2011.
Well, it was 2011, so championship banner.
Thursday night, we bring in the Saints. He and Rodgers and Drew Brees go back and forth. I don't know if you remember, they picked a receiver there in the second round. Randall Cobb, right? He has the 108-yard touchdown return and the whole thing. Yeah. So, the Super Bowl champs return. Their first of 15 wins that season. Totally, we're going to win the next Super Bowl. And then the part happened where they didn't. But number 3 is 2011. Right there.
The NFL kickoff concert was incredible.
Was it?
Pretty sure Maroon 5 played, Kid Rock played. They set the stage up literally right in the middle of Oneida Street, right there by what was the old Brown County Arena. Absolute blast.
Yeah. And that Thursday night game, by the way, as so many things happen on ESPN, like the draft. Oh, my gosh, that's amazing. Let's all see the draft. Like, who's going to watch the first couple of rounds of the NCAA tournament? We'll put it on. Now it's amazing. That Thursday night game, a fellow that worked here, one of our mucky mucks, Mark Shapiro, who came in and he did Sports Century, and he was kind of George Bodenheimer's right man. He fought with the NFL for Thursday night. Do a Thursday night opener. Trust me, do a Thursday night opener. I get it. Fought it. He finally gets it. They do it on ESPN. It goes, and now, of course, it's a staple, and people can't wait for that Thursday night game. Had to talk the NFL dragging and screaming into that game.
Was that the first time it was on Thursday night?
No.
Okay.
No, it wasn't, but it was the two defending Super Bowl champs.
Yeah.
Right?
I like it. All right, I got that one right. I like it.
All right, number 4, 1980.
Number two.
Number two. 1980, Marco Miracle.
Whoa, yeah, you were there. Yeah.
I was there. I know, Boomer. Yes, I was there. I was there kind of really hoping Walter Payton's team would win. That was a very famous game. I thought it was an October game. Turns out it was a season opener against the Bears at 6-6. Chester Marco lines up to kick the game-winning field goal. It's blocked. Joy, no, because you turn around and Alan Page has blocked it right back to Marco, who's holding the ball in his head, and he runs around left side and he scores. Marco Miracle. I have that Marco Miracle at number 2.
I've learned recently that you wish people would just stop bringing that up to you.
Just but only the people I know and love. So that's, it's not perfect. Yeah. And then so I blame Walter Payton. And the last one, number 1, 1959.
That is the the season after we won the first Super Bowl, yeah?
No.
Damn it. Damn, it was worth a good guess.
You're a decade off.
Damn. Really?
1959, Vince Lombardi's first game.
First
game.
Okay.
And they win 9-6 over the Packers, or over the Bears. Bears had it 6-0. Fourth quarter, they win. Extra point if you can tell me who was the quarterback on that team. Bart Starr was on the roster, was not the starting quarterback.
No, I got nothing. Literally nothing.
This is where I need my boy Byron, my buddy. He'd know right away. That was Lamar McCann. That's who Lombardi thought was going to be the guy. He had been a number one pick of the Cardinals in Chicago and played there for many, many years. And he thought that was probably going to be his guy. And so the Packers come back late. They win it 9-6. They win their first 3 games under Lombardi. It's amazing. And then they lost 5 in a row. And then they won the last 4, but and they finished up 7-5. And then the next year, 1960, right? That's when they go to the championship game at Franklin Field in Philadelphia and lose the only playoff game that Vince Lombardi would ever lose in his second year.
What year was Super Bowl 1?
Really?
I don't know the year. No, I don't know the year. Apparently, I was a decade off. I thought it was that.
1966.
Yeah, I knew that. No, you said that.
Yeah. Well, the 66 season, I believe, played in 67.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right?
66 season, Super Bowl 1. Yeah.
And you always know that what Super Bowl it is because on the date it's played, you go, I wonder how old Steve Levy is, or John Anderson, or John Buccigross. So on the date of the Super Bowl, I will be 58. It's Super Bowl 58.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, that's how I always keep track.
Well, there's a home opener on the way. Mr. Jordan Love, kind of interesting from a season opener, forgive me, at the Bears. Is that not fitting for this quarterback to start literally against the Bears?
Some of the Packers' greatest opening day wins have been against the Bears. You know? Perfect. And by the way, if he goes down there and he wins, and if he's got anything to him at all, he needs to stand up there and just go, and now I own you.
And yeah, the ownership has been handed off.
Right? Like, I know that would be terrible, and he'd have to live for that which hopefully is the next 20 years, 15 years playing quarterback. But that would be so amazing for him to score some touchdown and look up there and just go, I think Rodgers gave me the deed. That would be fantastic if that happened.
We'll
see. The Inside Wisconsin Show is brought to you by American Family Insurance, Aaron's Company, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, Capital Credit Union, Festival Foods, Quick Trip, Miller Lite, North Star Mohican Casino Resort, Provea Health, and the University of Wisconsin-Platteville.
Hey, remember to subscribe on YouTube, leave a review, smash the like button, just get with us. The official grocery and tailgating headquarters of the Green Bay Packers, Festival Foods, hopping for the preseason, 2 home games, and now the regular season beginneth, and we tailgateth often.
Tell me, what's the strangest thing you've ever eaten at a tailgate?
It's funny. I went to the website, festfoods.com, and clicked on the tailgate thing. And the first item after I clicked on the G on the homepage was bananas. And I've literally had bananas at a tailgate. It must have been one of those early ones where people were making breakfast and there was bananas, and I've had bananas at a tailgate.
Yeah, that's not a traditional tailgate food for sure.
Really.
But I went to a game at Ole Miss once, and those people, right? The Grove, they tailgate and I'm like, these people had an ahi tuna tower. I'm like, that is not tailgating. It is for them. They had a chandelier in their tent, but still, that seemed to me, that's the oddest thing I've ever seen. Somebody had an ahi tuna tower.
I think you can get that at Festival Foods, if I'm not mistaken. There are some people that hire once a year, they hire a private chef, and they bring a private chef to their tailgate. They get all the ingredients for the tailgate at Festival Foods, and then they bring the chef, and the chef makes all the food. That's pretty incredible. I've never had ahi tuna, though, but bananas was a little out of the box.
You want to really confuse people? Is work at ESPN.
Yeah.
The height of Stuart Stott's thing, and go, well, if you go there to get soup, you have booyah.
Booyah, right?
Like, no, that's booyah. I'm like, no, it's different. Stuart Scott, booyah. And this is actually, you eat chicken booyah. I guess those do sound exactly the same, don't they? Yeah, and it's crazy. Like, I'm pretty sure if Stu went there, he'd go, look at this. They named soup after me. And I'm like, no, Stu, they did not. The late Stuart Scott, God rest his soul. But I've always found that at ESPN is really funny. Here's like, I go by the wall every day and you go to the studio, they have all these trademark catchphrases and stuff that are in there. And there's the booyah one is framed and kind of set out in Stu's honor. But every time I go back and I think booyah, and I'm like, it's 2 a.m, but I'm hungry and I could eat that. So,
hey,
but
speaking of
booyah at Festival Foods too.
Real quick, let's cover some booyah ground here. That's the old name of the Green Bay Northwoods League baseball team.
Yep.
The new name and the champions. Did you see this? The Green Bay Rockers won the Northwoods League championship in 2023. Boom. Booyah.
Better than that. Rocking it.
Back on the Packers preview. We just got done with Jason Wilde. We're pretty much pillaging cover 2 now. That's WBAY sports director Chris Rock. What's up, dude?
Nice to see you, gentlemen. It's tough to follow Jason Wilde. Normally, I am serving in the host role with Jason Wilde, but to follow him up, brevity might be my best option here. We love you, Jason.
I thought cover 2 was WBAY. Maybe I have that wrong, and that's like that would be a great slogan. I don't know what you guys are using. Are you local, live, and late breaking? Because I know that's 98% of the stations anymore.
No, we got rid of that. I think FRV had the mark cornered the market on that, if you will. We've never been that. I don't know what the heck we're your first alert station. That's
first alert now. Yeah,
that's right.
Listen, you can always win with weather when you pull them out there. So we spent so much time talking about number 10, and we'll get there. But I want to know from you if I completely focus on Jordan Love. Because I don't know if you saw it at ESPN, we're completely focused on Jordan Love.
I've noticed.
What am I missing? Like, where else is there a fulcrum on this team that isn't number 10?
I think it's got to be their run defense, right? I mean, this defense was built a year ago when they went again heavy with the first round with Quay Walker at inside linebacker and Devontae Wyatt, bringing the total number of first-round picks on that defense to 7. They thought, and at that time we thought, okay, they're laying the groundwork, right? Because if you're going to eventually have a young quarterback, what are you going to need? You're going to need a solid defense, obviously, and you're going to need a run game. So that foundation was being built for the transition whenever it happened. It obviously happened to be this year. But if they can't stop the run, then your young quarterback's got to play catch up all the time with less clock, right? So to me, that's it. That's been the bugaboo for Joe Barry in his tenure here, is they have not been good at stopping the run, particularly when you factor in yards per carry. Sometimes their total numbers are top half of the league, but yards per carry have been pretty bad. So that's where it has to start for me on defense, because that way your young quarterback and young offense is in the game. I know everybody's focusing on 10, and I'm sure this has been talked about too, and the ups and downs and what's he going to do. But keep in mind that the guys he's throwing the ball to outside of the running backs, they're in their second year in the league or they're rookies. So while we all may go, Jordan Love threw a terrible pass, do we know that the guy was in the right position? So that stuff has to work itself out. The constant has to be the defense has to be able to hold up its end of the bargain, and they need to get off the field. They can't allow teams to have these long drives, and the run defense has just been bad the last few years.
It's interesting that you say you're kind of watching them build it, right? You've been on the beat. We just asked you off air, 29 seasons.
Yep.
This is your 29th. Jason's been doing it, I think, 27 seasons, 25 seasons, somewhere in there.
That sounds right. About 27, I think. He was there a few years after me. Yeah.
So over 50 years between the two of you, have you seen them do this before? I mean, this whole quarterback change thing happened, right? But they're pretty strategic with this rebuild, even though it's not a rebuild, whatever you're calling it these days.
Yeah, I don't know if you can go back all the way to when we started to make that comparison, because obviously the salary cap and the CBA has changed things and the way you can build teams, et cetera. But it's not what they did in 2008, obviously, and that's what we all have to compare to, right? So this has been different. This has been a little bit more systematic, knowing it's coming because he was getting long in the tooth. And when we're ready to pull the trigger, let's have a soft landing area for a young quarterback. So I think this has been a little bit more strategic, a little more systematic than it was in 2008. But that's really the only thing you have to compare to, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And yet, if you sit in my chair, which is kind of the wider view, if you would, 10,000 people see these as exactly the same thing.
They're not.
Quarterback, wasn't happy. He goes to New York. Here's a quarterback. 15 years later, he's not happy. He goes to New York.
Yeah.
Right. If you were to explain the difference to my neighbor over here, what would you tell him? That's the difference in the field.
Aaron doesn't hate the Packers like Brett did at the time. Aaron didn't try and force his way back in after he said he was leaving. Those are the two different things. Now, what Aaron's saying privately, who knows? Maybe he was a little miffed that they went that way, or as he said, there was no communication. I think at this point we're past the semantics game. So that's the biggest difference. There's no animosity. And the organization, John, has cover for this, right? I mean, this was the time to do it. You're coming off a losing record. The guy has made more headlines sometimes off the field than on. The palatability, if you will, if that's even a word. Are we making stuff up? Let's just make something. It's more palatable this time around to change quarterbacks than it was in 2008 coming off an NFC championship season. So those are the big differences, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we can't forecast, but so many people are saying if you get 3 in a row, that's crap, right? How would you ever do that? Is it just not okay to be good instead of Hall of Fame, best player ever great? I mean, we've seen some bad quarterbacks in Green Bay over the years.
You never
just
have.
be good?
You haven't.
Wow.
Who are you kidding?
I know.
I don't know. I listen, there's bad quarterbacks all around the NFL, right? I mean, terrible quarterbacks that shouldn't be in the league. So if they get stuck with one, hey, welcome to the party, right? I mean, they have flown above the norm for so very, very long. They're bound to get it wrong at some point. I'm not suggesting they got it wrong this time. I don't know if the guy's going to be an MVP player or a Hall of Fame player. Nobody knows. Anybody tells you differently is pulling your leg. Nobody knows, right? I think the bar for him is linear progression, right? There's going to be ups and downs, but as long as it's kind of moving in that upward direction towards the end of the season, I think that's all you can measure success on this year, in my opinion. I mean, if you luck into a playoff spot, great, but it's all about progression. And is there more forward progression than backwards? And to me, that's a successful season with a first-year starting quarterback and all the inexperience at the skill positions. That, to me, is how you measure success this year. Not by the end of the season, do you know if he's going to be a Hall of Famer or an MVP? Of course you don't. They didn't know that in 2008 either. I mean, that's absurd.
I think we're trending, right? Isn't that the buzzword? We got to be trending. We need to be trending.
Right. More positive than negative by the end of the season, and you feel good about your decision. If not, you move on and you try and find the next one. Like every other team has pretty much had to do in the NFL. It happens.
Do you detect a freshness about things, even though there's one change and that's a quarterback?
Yeah, to me, I was asking one of the staffers, I can't remember if it was last practice or Saturday at the preseason game, does it just feel different around here? And they said, yeah, because the expectations are so different, right? The expectations are, let's hope he's good. Not, we have to win a Super Bowl because sand's running out of the hourglass, right? So I think that in itself is refreshing. And it's a much younger team. There's no 10-ton gorilla around. It's just a different atmosphere.
We talked about how different it is, I guess, this year with Aaron versus when it was Brett. Is there a moment, though, when it seemed to click, right? And I'm trying to think back of when we realized Aaron was going to be Aaron. How many seasons do you remember that being in? And are there things that you're seeing as you cover the team, Chris, that Jordan Love shows you that could be?
I'll take the last one first. I haven't seen anything yet, but I'm not really sure what that would be. And he hasn't really had. That's not going to come in a preseason game. It's not going to come in a practice. I will say this. The one thing that impresses me, and you guys have been, John, you've certainly been around professional athletes and coaches. It's the mentality and the even keel and the doesn't get too up, doesn't get too down. I mean, he seems to have the mentality and the maturity to play the position. Now, whether or not he can, that's another thing, but he won't bounce off the walls, good or bad, with whatever happens. So there won't be an overreaction to something good that happens. There won't be an overreaction to something bad. He's pretty even keeled. And I think that mentality will serve him well as he goes through the expected ups and downs, right, of the season. So I think that's good. But as for moments, for me, the one that jumps out would have been that 2009 playoff game that they wound up losing in Arizona for Rodgers, and you thought, okay, this guy's really special because he was putting balls where they just shouldn't be. And it was really a remarkable performance. He almost single-handedly lifted them to a playoff win, and that's when you knew he was pretty special because they were starting to win close games in 2009. I'm sure it's been talked about many times on your program. They didn't win a lot of close games in 2008 with him. I think they lost. They were like 1-7 in one-score games, and they won their first one, which was the first start of the year, and then they lost the other 7. So that's usually the measure of a quarterback. They started doing that in 2009, and then they had that great performance in the playoffs, and you thought, okay, he's special. But I don't remember thinking, well, he's going to the Hall of Fame. It was just like, this guy's really good.
Right.
Especially when you look at, go look at the lines are weak. Like everything's a one-score game, right?
Yeah,
right. Anymore. That's the thing. Everything's that one-score game. Let's talk about the head coach because the last couple of years it's been, oh, look, Aaron Rodgers is doing all this, this. And we kind of forget that Aaron Rodgers, he was not great the year before LaFleur showed up. And
he wasn't great the year LaFleur showed up either.
Right.
That's why they drafted Jordan Love.
He managed to coach him back up into that position. And yet it seems to me there is some sort of weight here on LaFleur now I don't know if it's like, we'll find out if the guy can really coach. I'm not really sure how I want to couch this, but just your thought on like, what does this season do kind of defining on Matt LaFleur and him as a coach?
Yeah, I think it says a lot, John. We've asked him many times in this offseason, are we finally going to see your offense? And I'll take you back to what Mark Murphy said when they hired Matt LaFleur, is that they hired him because of his offense, because it's going to scheme guys open, because it's going to make the job easier for the quarterback. I think that started to change a little bit the more LaFleur worked with Rodgers and vice versa. We all know what happened in the offseason before the 2020 season where they kind of reworked the offense. What do you like? What do you not like? And then you started to wonder whose offense was it? And it was a combination. And so we've asked Matt a lot this offseason, once Aaron was gone, are we finally going to see your offense? And he bristles at that. But I think to me, that's just more coach speak. It is his offense, but he wants to say it's everybody. We all have a say in this. We all work, the coaches, the players. I get that. That's coach speak. But it is his philosophy now. He doesn't have to ask a longtime veteran, surefire Hall of Famer, what he's comfortable with. Do you want to run this? He doesn't have to acquiesce in any situation to a guy that's played as much as he has. It's really his. Now, is he going to ask Jordan what he likes? Of course he is. Any head coach worth his salt would do that. But it is going to be his stamp more so than it has been the last 3 years. And I think it is fair to judge on that, keeping in mind the inexperience that he has at all those skill positions, which is huge. But you're right. He's going to be judged this year, fairly or unfairly, because Rodgers is gone and his influence is gone. So it's going to look a lot more like Matt's responsibility and offense than it has in the past. So I think that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that your job to tell what's coach speak and what's not coach speak?
I don't know if it's my job, but if you spend a long enough time around this, you kind of know what it is, right, John?
Yeah.
I mean, there's
all coach speak.
Yeah, some people call it a BS meter. We'll just call it coach speak now. You know they're not going to give you anything. So yeah,
I like
his back is against the wall this year, and we'll see how he does.
Exactly.
I'm noticing more personality on this Packers team. Jair Alexander came out in shades at the Packers welcome back luncheon. I think he wears those things
he wears them all the time. He was wearing them last year. He had those goofy, they looked like 1950s Beach Bunny. They're all white plastic things. He'd wear those all the time. Yeah, Aaron Jones has been wearing sunglasses for a while because of I think he's got a deal with Oakley. He's wearing them on the sidelines. So I'm not sure that's new.
That's fair. But there is new personality. It feels different. There's a different energy. And maybe that came
a lot younger
from when you took the big personality right out of it.
Maybe, but I would caution against saying that's a direct cause and effect. Part of this is just they're a lot younger, right? So he's gone. All the guys that he wanted on the team are gone, and they've been replaced by younger guys. And maybe there's more room to express yourself. There's certainly more leadership positions open, and I think naturally guys will fill that void. They have to, right? So I think that's part of it. I don't know that it's a direct cause and effect. Just because Rodgers is gone, this team can breathe a little easier and be looser and be more personable.
Listen, and we can't forecast Hall of Famers and we can't forecast Super Bowls, but you talk about how young they are, right? Here we've got a new tight end that's come in, a couple of them. Reed is a wide receiver. The other guys are second-year deals.
He looks really good, by the way.
A.J. Dillon's still a young guy.
Yeah.
There is a sense, like, again, so I'm not saying they're going to end up with 3 Super Bowls like the Cowboys, but there was something about that group that grew up together. So I think if they get it right, there is a chance here. I'm like John Winger in Stripes. Talk about your potential for growth. But there really is, right? If they bond together, if they've got it right, then all these guys being young, they'll be young for a little bit, but they could really blossom and have something here.
Yeah, no question. There's always that danger, though, that everybody falls into that trap, right? That once they have success, they'll continue to have success. And you just have to go back to 2010. I mean, that receiver group outside of Donald Driver was young, right? I mean, in 2011, they set the world on fire with that offense, and it amounted to 0 playoff wins, right? So you can never anoint based on success, but there certainly is the potential. And that's what Brian talked about. I believe it was after the draft when they picked Jaden Reed and they had made the decision that I want to give this offense a chance to grow together. And the upside, or the best possible outcome of growing together, is growing successfully together, right? So, yeah, I think there's a possibility for that, but it doesn't. What I would guard against is as soon as they have success, doesn't mean they're going to continually have success. The league tends to not work that way.
Right.
For years, you've been successful covering the team, Chris. We asked Jason this at the end of his. Well, you deserve credit. Let's be honest. You do a really good job.
I'm still pulling a paycheck, so we'll count that as a win. Yeah.
No.
We asked Jason this at the end of our chat with him. Is there something that sticks out to you as special to cover the Green Bay Packers? Is there a favorite part that you have?
That's a heck of a question. Try to cut through all the things that we just I've taken for granted for so long, right? That the access. I guess the best way to relay that feeling is there are, people in my non-professional life that will ask me questions all the time about, you got to talk to so-and-so, or you got to talk to this, and you were in there. And, when people find out what I do, there's still that wow factor. Like, really? The Green Bay Packers? So sometimes you forget what this means to other people. I mean, we try and convey and report on this team as objectively as we can. And I would say this, and I don't think you guys would argue with it. I think this is a very educated fan base, right? I mean, the people that cover this team have covered this team for a long time. They're very good at what they do, present company excluded, but they're very good at what they do. So this is a very knowledgeable fan base. So that puts pressure, at least from my perspective. I've always thought this. That puts pressure on us to have very smart, intelligent coverage, because they already know the basics, right? And so you can't take that for granted. So in working to deliver that, sometimes you lose sight of just how important it is to be able to stand next to one of these guys that everybody else looks up to as a hero, because of this small town community. They all think they're theirs. And maybe we lose sight of that. And it's pretty cool when you see it affect people and you remember, oh yeah, that's right. What they mean.
Yeah. You try to cover a team objectively, but in Green Bay, there's no objectivity about the Packers.
Right.
In your audience, there's none. I'm not going to let Trevor seem like he's escorting you off the show right here with that question.
I was going to say, I thought we were going 20 or 30 minutes. That didn't feel that long.
I like that stuff.
It sounded like me. Like, are you trying to get him out? I am not done. I have to talk about it. Like, I want to talk about, oh, by the way, if I'm a Packer fan, am I more worried about the Vikings or the Lions or the Bears in that division?
Well, I'm not worried about the Bears.
I don't think so either. People are crazy about them. They got the Packers at the bottom. Like, what have I seen from Justin Fields yet? Other than he runs around like Bobby Douglas. Good for him.
Right. He holds the ball forever. They've got a lot of questions. DJ Moore is a really good player, but you got to have a quarterback that could put it on him every time he's open. I'm not sure Fields has ever been that accurate. And they only won 3 games last year, even if a good season for them is going to be 7 wins, right? I mean, so no, they're not going to win the division. I would be stunned if that happens. To me, I think the Lions are the best team. I think the Vikings have a lot of question marks. They've revamped that offense. without Dalvin Cook, without Adam Thielen. Justin Jefferson is great, but who's going to take the pressure away from him? I think the Lions, based on the way they finished last season, and it's really hard to carry momentum over, but they look like a team on the rise with a lot of young talent. Having said that, 10 wins probably gets it done in the Central. So it could be Minnesota, it could be Green Bay. But I don't think the Bears are in that discussion. That would seem to be really far-fetched to me.
Yeah, and I like Coach Eberflus. I've known him for a long time, but yeah, the idea that suddenly the Packers have dropped all the way to the bottom in terms of the odds, I find that really perhaps slighting Green Bay some, and certainly overestimating what's in Chicago right there. What's funny I find about the Lions is Dan Campbell, who in that first press conference, right, I still joke about them being the kneecap biters and all.
Yeah, right.
And yet I talked to Mark Murphy at one point, and we were just kind of visiting. I said, how, when you went through and you found Matt, how many other guys? He goes, who was really impressive that we talked to that was one of the kind of the guys in the running was Dan Campbell. And I'm like, okay, I guess maybe I need to look at him more seriously than just the kneecap biter.
Right.
And I think he has so much of this X and O's stuff, and we get caught up in that. And Bill Walsh was a genius, and I sat around enough conversation with John Gruden talking about it. Listen, if you can get your guys to play on Sunday, that is way bigger part of the battle than load schemes and motions and ball fakes.
Yeah, I agree with you. And if I can just add this too,
please
tie this back into LaFleur. One of the things that he really was credited for in 2019 wasn't this. I said earlier, they hired him because they wanted his offense and his scheme and all that stuff, which was fine. But he was credited so much with creating this awesome atmosphere in the locker room. He's done it every year. He's been a magician at that, in my opinion, and it has overlooked a lot of times his ability to create this atmosphere in the locker room. So I would liken what Dan Campbell has done to what Matt did in his first year. It's hard to change culture, especially one in Detroit, which is just losing. It appears that he's done that. That is a huge credit to him because that place was downtrodden, to say the least. That's tough to turn that around, but they're doing it, and they're building a roster with a lot of young talent. So to that point about Dan being impressive, it doesn't surprise me at all.
I asked Jason this question, and I didn't like his answer, so I'm hoping yours is different.
It'll be shorter, I promise you that. Love you, Jason.
Dude, it's the internet. Talk as long as you want.
It's fair.
It's the interwebs.
Are the Packers?
The weather guy is not coming for you on this program, Chris. You're not giving time back because there's a snowstorm or a thunderstorm.
Nobody's taking their coat off and rolled up the sleeves. There's nothing major happening.
All right, give it to me.
Are the Packers going to win the Super Bowl in the next 7 years?
Seriously?
So this is the scoop.
How the hell is anybody supposed to answer that question?
I have a bet with a buddy who's just god awful pissed off at the front office because I said this to Jason. He feels like we wasted 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks because we've had them for the last 30 years and only 2 Super Bowls.
Okay.
I said there seems to be something that we're building. You kind of confirmed that at the beginning of this chat. So I made a wager that I believe they're going to win the Super Bowl in the next 7 years.
Okay.
Mr. Wilde, not so confident. So I'm hoping that you're maybe a little more confident, but your quick answer wasn't so confident.
I'm going to be confident for you because I hope you win your bet, but I have no idea how to answer that question. It's impossible to answer that question, but I think here's what I'll tell you that you should feel pretty good about. Okay. At least in my opinion, right? Whatever happens this year, and we talked about how you want to measure success. I told you how I would measure success. Keep in mind that at this particular point, right now, we still haven't finished the final roster cuts, but they cut Pat O'Donnell today. So I believe that puts their dead cap money this year just over $58 million. Okay? So if you win 9 games this year, 8 games, whatever, great. Remember, you're paying you're counting $58 million against your cap for guys who are not on the team. So if you can pull that off with that much dead money, imagine what you can do when you get out from your financial hell. As long as they spend it right and go in the right direction, then you got a chance. So then your 7 years, at least you're going to have a team that's going to contend for a Super Bowl. Not this year. If that happens, we're all
I think that's a great
horseshoes out of our backside. But
I like my odds. I appreciate you bringing
you
money into it. Yeah,
you can build a better roster after this year. That's what this move was about. This quarterback move was about as much as anything else. It is time to reset our financial picture because we cannot keep going down this road with him, with the players that he wants, with the salary cap the way it is. We just can't do it. So it's time to reset. Take our pain. $58 million is a lot of pain.
Trev, I would say this. Outside of the Chiefs, go through the other 31 NFL teams and ask yourself that same question. Can they win a Super Bowl in the next 7 years? I don't know that there's one of them. The Bills, okay, but they got to go through the Chiefs. The Bengals, maybe they've got I don't know that you can ask that question fundamentally and get just a yes.
Right? Look at,
any team except maybe the Chiefs.
Right. Okay. So the Chiefs, what is it? 4 straight AFC title games, 2 Super Bowls, right? Yeah. Right. What's the next most consistent team in the NFL over that span? I think it's the 49ers, right? 3 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl loss, right? So they may not get it done in 7 years, and they've been very, very good.
Yeah. I think it's
hard, man. It's really hard.
The people that would say that they've wasted 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks is I get it, but they, and you always feel like, how hard it is. I sat down it was shortly a year or 2 after the Packers had won the Super Bowl with some of those 2010 guys. And it's amazing how their appreciation for what they had done grew as they got farther away from it, because you go through it, right? And it was this charmed life, and they just were crushing people. We go to Atlanta and blow them out of the gym and all this other stuff. And you get away from it, you go like, boy, that is really hard, And then it's like, oh, if we just get a home game for the championship, okay, we did. And then Tom Brady threw it over the guy's head.
That team wasn't even a lock to make the playoffs with like 3 weeks to go.
Yeah.
They snuck in as the 6th seed.
So that's a really hard thing. That's why when people win it sometimes, at least around our place, they're like, all right, you got a 5-year grace. You cannot bitch for 5 years after you win. That means we're back on the clock and have for several seasons. Right. I just think that's a really hard thing to go through and find that. What I'm saying is, Trevor, what are you doing making that bet?
I was going to say, I probably should have had these conversations before I accepted the bet. It was a little.
I hope you didn't put that sweet RV on the line.
No, here we go with the Winnebago. Yeah, okay. He saw it. Chris got to see it in person.
I did.
He didn't ask you to come in, did he? Because then
he did. No, he was on his way out after he had showered. So the timing was
Trevor,
perfect.
I fear for you because I know you say you're going out to Vegas for that game, and I don't know that I might not have a chaperone for you. If this is how you're going to.
My wife will be there. She's a good chaperone, I promise.
Oh, Lord. So, Chris, tell me what kind of coverage you have planned. What's your year long when you come into this? This has nothing to do with the Packers. It has everything to do with my interest in how my side of the business operates. Like when you, how's the plan? Where are you on Monday nights? What do what's my post game show? What's my week look like?
Yeah. So, well, for us, because we're an ABC affiliate, we don't have many games. The only one we're going to have this year is the Monday nighter in New York. Yeah. Against the Giants. The Vegas game is an ESPN game. We don't have the over-air broadcast retransmission on that. So we don't have Sunday night games. It's tougher as an ABC station. That's going to get better here in the next few years. We'll have a Super Bowl and all that stuff. Yep. So maybe that'll line up. And then Trevor will win his bet. And we'll all be happy. Boom. So for us, our focus is our Sunday night show, which is at Cover 2. And Jason's on that with Domofsky and Mark Daniels. They're our panelists. And that is for the hardcore football nut. If you're going to stay up until 10:35 when you've seen the highlights on your phone a bazillion times by that point, we better be delivering something they're not getting in the palm of their hand. So that's the design on that show. And Sunday nights, if it's a Sunday night game, then that show becomes live, instant post game stuff. Mm-hmm. But mostly for us, it's our focus is outside of the day to day is that Cover 2 program.
Yeah, that's why I said we pillaged it a little bit because Wildy's been on now and Domofsky's been on. Yeah. Yep. We just need Mark Daniels, and I think we're going to have it covered. He's
been around here the longest.
Yeah.
But do you still get the juice after a game when that light comes on and it's
yeah.
Like right now I'm sitting through the dog days of summer and you're like, oh wait, a no hitter finally. Okay, good.
Yeah, right.
Go.
Yeah.
Do you still?
I am excited for the 10th because training camp. Thank God it's only 3 preseason games, but it still it's really long. and they don't practice nearly as much as they used to and all that. And, get off my lawn. And when I went to school, I walked uphill and they had 2-a-days, blah, blah, all that stuff. That's all gone, but it still gets to be kind of boring from our perspective after a while. So we're excited for September 10th to start, because then you can really start digging in, right? You can really dig into what this team is doing, what they're doing wrong, what went right, what didn't, those kinds of things, have some things to compare to. And, start answering the question that everybody's been asking since March. Mm-hmm. Is he any good? We'll start to find out.
All right. We promised we'd only keep you 20, 30 minutes. I was going to ask you if you had any words for Wes Hodkiewicz. It's the only name that comes up every single time we talk Packers on this show.
Young Wes?
Young Wes.
Wes is a legend. He is a legend before his time. Let's put it that way. He hasn't lived long enough to be a legend, but he is.
And yet he is.
Yep, no question.
He is. Hey, Chris, it was good to see you, man. Thanks for jumping on.
My pleasure.
The WBAY Sports Director, Channel 2 here in Green Bay. Someday we're going to get the story out of you two. There's a little bit of a crossover there between Chris coming to BAY and John Lanny on Sports Center.
That didn't happen this time, actually.
He got
me at the Remmel Awards a couple of years ago.
What's that?
I said, you got me at the Remmel Awards a couple of years ago.
Yeah, listen, there's no crossover. They had two people look at the job. They hired the right guy. And then I found it
depends on your perspective, right? Right guy. I could have had a bigger bank account and a fuller set of hair.
Dude, 24 years, 25 years in the same city with my mother. The right guy got the job.
How many years did you spend in the same city with your mother?
There is no question that the right dude got the job.
I love it.
Guys, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris Roth.
All right, guys. Take care.
I'm really grateful that you co-host shows like this. I mean, all the shows, but I don't know jack about the X's and O's. You carry this program. Thanks, Jay. Those guys know their stuff too. Jason Wilde, Chris Roth, they know their stuff.
No, and I've always said this about football coaches. I probably said it on the show. It's kind of like Cubs, my Cubs line. I am always amazed at football coaches, having covered them over so many years, that you ask them about game plans or what are they thinking on Tuesdays or Wednesdays. And they will go out of their way to belittle you, that there's no way you can understand the X's and O's, that you don't know this, you haven't been there, that these are the most complicated things in the world, to put, like I watched Oppenheimer, and that's not as hard as watching offensive football, right? When you go in the film room. And so they make you feel that way. And then Sunday, or if it's a college coach, Saturday afternoon, it gets done, you go into the press room and you try to get them to explain, and what's the first thing they say? Listen, if you can't block and you can't tackle, you can't win. It's no different than Pee Wee football. Really? Because Wednesday, I was completely incapable of understanding pro football. Today, you're telling me that Rhodey could understand how to play pro football because it's all blocking and tackling. And if you don't get your guy and manhandle him up front and impose your will, you're never going to win the football game.
Ron Wolf told us that. Blocking, tackling, and kicking. That's it.
Pick one of those. I'm either a complete dolt, or I can win this. I can learn this with a 6th grade education.
Yeah,
it's one of the two.
Well, yeah, you are not adult. I think it's interesting when you've been doing your job, John, for 25 plus years. Chris has been 29 seasons into the Packers. Jason Wilde, 25 plus years, 28th season, I think. Mm-hmm. You watch football differently when you cover it than you do as a fan. And I know that there's some fans that watch it and know what formations and where they think the ball is going to go. I just enjoy the entertainment side. And like Jason said, the people's stories, but there's it's a different level when you really need to know the X's and O's and ask Coach LaFleur questions about this play or that down, or what was your decision here? Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering if he's going to cuss in the post-game presser. That's why I watch it. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it'd be nice. And after you do it long enough, you're like, you just can't sit and want a game. You just want a game to just wash over you, and then you can't. Because you're like, that guy missed a block, or what were they making that call for? Or you're like, that announcer just missed an obvious, connection between two people. Like that happened to me just watching the track and field the other day. And I'll make it. But there were two gals. One was running for Great Britain, and one of them was running for the U.S. And they were side by side, And at no point did the announcer go, those two are college teammates. Like they're running for different countries and they're in Hungary and they're two gals that run at the same school. Wow. And I'm like, why don't you point that out? So yeah, it's hard to watch, but oh well, it is what it is. It is what it is. So
it is what it is. And so too is all of the stories that are your childhood. The next edition of John Wisconsin is now. What do we got?
So I don't know that this is compelling. This is more of kind of a ESPN Did You Know?
Oh, I like it.
And this is good for you too, because it happened before you were born and you will like to know. Do you know that what's the only team that's ever been undefeated for a whole NFL season?
Miami Dolphins.
1972 Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
So picture 1972, 7-year-old John Anderson. He's up at his cottage with his folks and people in Sand Bay, up on Door County, Sand Bay Beach Resort. Uh-huh. And you're watching on the black and white TV that we've run the cable, the extension cords all the way out so you can watch it by the bonfire and make s'mores. Oh. And you watch the Green Bay Packers. It's not nailed to a tree like you with a plasma.
Okay, I was going to say, now it's okay to have a TV by a bonfire. I got it.
Like this big, and it's got a, Jerry out there. And you're 7, and you're watching because the Packers are on, because they're in Miami. You can actually see the game on BAY or whatever it is. And you watch as the Green Bay Packers beat the Miami Dolphins in the preseason 14-13. The undefeated Dolphins lost. That's back when they played 6 preseason games. But in the preseason, actually lost a game. The only game they lost at the Orange Bowl. They lost one of the preseason games. But the only game they lost at the Orange Bowl that whole year was 1972 in the preseason to the Green Bay Packers 14-13.
Oh.
I know. Most people forget that. But the Packers actually beat the undefeated Dolphins in 1972.
Amazing.
Dan Devine's team that eventually went on to win the division that year, by the way, before losing in the division game to the Redskins.
Was that the highlight of the Green Bay Packers from 1970 to 1983?
No, listen, as I said, 72, they were really good. That was Devine's second year. They won the division, went to Washington, and just got the crap kicked out of them. And then the then Redskins, the Commanders, ended up losing in the Super Bowl to the Dolphins 14-7 that year. Game that should have been 17-0, except they block a Garrow Premian field goal, and I think it was Mike Bass took it back. So they were going to win 7. They were going to have a 17-0 season and win 17-0. And then the little kicker from Cyprus or wherever he was got the kick blocked, tried to throw a pass, intercepted, and anyway 14-7. They're still undefeated.
Can you just tell the viewers and listeners of Inside Wisconsin that none of that was prepped? All of that just now came straight out of the memory bank, yeah?
I did have to look up the score. I just remember the Packers had won.
Jeez.
Yeah, 14-13. I didn't. Yeah, but most of that I remember. Listen, I say this all the time, and you would find this true too. You someday will dazzle the boys.
Sure.
The stuff you remember from when you are 7, 8, 9, 12, 15, when you are really, sports is all you have in life. There's nothing else to distract you. A car payment, getting a kid to the doctor, none of that. I tell you, I remember stuff like that. Don't ask me what the score of the Brewer game was yesterday. I'd have to go look that up. Some things you just, they make that impact and you internalize. And, I think the Brewers at one point this season recently won 7, 8, 9 games in a row, something like that. It's good for them. Beat up on the Twins, which was nice. But for the life of me, don't even try to ask me a score.
Yeah. From back in. Yeah, I know. It's super fun. Well, we love those stories and we love Packers football season. We are off and running. I think I know the answer to this question, but you don't do predictions, right? You're not an 11-5 type of guy. Let's just watch the games and see how it goes. Yeah. Well,
especially with this year's Packer team, that is really,
yeah.
What's the sweet spot? And it's going to be is 6. I mean, I think you could watch them win 6 games and feel good about them. I think if you win 9, you're going to feel great about them. But I think you could watch and as both our guests indicated, I think you're going to get a handle on something of what they are and what they could be. Doesn't mean they will be, but you're like, okay, I think this is good, or this may need to be cooked one more year, or we might go, wow, this is unmitigated disaster. Is it possible?
Listen,
is Colt McCoy available on the waiver wire?
Ooh.
So,
Hey, this year can suck all we want as long as we win the Super Bowl sometime in the next 6 years. Then I'm totally cool with that. That's
sure. Yep. And listen, as long as you don't care, you got your quarterback. Your other guys in New York.
all right.
And
Luckily for me, all of it's recorded. And if I have to eat crow, I will. But I really don't think I'm going to have to.
You got a lot of people on your side.
Yeah, I know.
You do.
That's true. And then there's educated people like you. All right, let's get out of here. Hey, next episode, pretty intriguing one. Stay tuned for that. It's about football. I think I can call it football. Just you're going to want to stay tuned. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet. John Anderson, Trevor Thomas, As You Were, Wisconsin, Go Pack Go. Remember to subscribe on YouTube, leave a review, smash the like button. Just get with us.
The Inside Wisconsin Show is brought to you by American Family Insurance, Aaron's Company, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, Capital Credit Union, Festival Foods, Quick Trip, Miller Lite, North Star Mohican Casino Resort, Provea Health, and the University of Wisconsin-Platteville.
Shut up and sit down.